As a startup entrepreneur who maybe isn't a finance expert, because we know that people start up businesses from absolutely all walks of life, what basic financial processes and resources do you think that entrepreneur would need?
Certainly. So the first thing is cash. When you're starting a business, really important to understand the cash implications of not working for somebody else. You have to generate the cash. And cash is king. And the ways you can get it, you can use your savings, you can get it from customers, you can increase prices, you can get more customers, or you can get them to pay quicker. You can borrow it, or you can get it from investors. Both of those typically take quite a bit of time, and you need to have some track record typically to be able to get it to borrow it or to get it from investors. And of course, you can pay less to your suppliers, or you can delay paying them. They might not be happy, but you can. And the final way that I'm aware of, you can get it from grants and R&D tax credits when you're creating something as well. And businesses go bust because of the lack of cash. They don't go bust because they're not making profits. So it's all about cash generation. And my top tip on cash is to have short payment terms yourself. I say take 50% of the payment on signing, or if you're selling B2C and it's done through a platform or through your website, you're getting the cash up front. And always look for, if you can't get it all paid up front, then when you have to issue an invoice, always look for 7-day payment terms. Ideal. You may not get them, but at least you've asked for them, and it's part of the negotiation as well. And the final way is if you're exporting, you've got a product, a food product, a drink product, then very often you can ask for pro forma invoices so you get paid before you ship. So again, you're getting cash coming into the business. Some key ratios you should be focused on when you're running your own business is the gross margin. And it's really key, this is taking your revenue or your sales price and taking off your costs for delivery or for producing what it is you're selling. So if you're hiring contractors, it's their cost, and you take that off and then divide it by your overall revenue number. Really key. And you need to think about, particularly in a food business or a manufacturing business, you should be looking for a gross margin of at least 50% to be able to generate enough cash to drive the business forward, to fund stock, to do your marketing, etc. And the second one is your net margin. And this is sometimes referred to as your net profit, sometimes EBITDA. There's different connotations of this, but this is taking your total revenue minus your total costs, giving you a net margin. But very often companies can run at a negative net margin, either making a loss for a few years, providing they are cash generative and they've got the cash coming in to fund the business. And a couple of other ones that you might want to think about is the cost of sales. A lot of people ignore the cost of sales. And if you're selling business to consumer, that is your customer acquisition cost. And the second one is your customer lifetime value. Once you've got a customer, you've spent all the money getting that customer on board, and therefore what you're looking for is a large amount of money coming from that one customer. It is something like 8 times more cost effective to sell to an existing customer than find a new customer. So absolutely critical. And your customer lifetime value, particularly in the consumer area, should be 4 or 5 times as much as your customer acquisition cost. So you can actually drive the business forward then. So always think about your cost of sale and try to minimize it. And one of the ways you can do this is through introductions and recommendations. Even in a B2C marketplace, you can ask for your customers to refer you to additional customers. It is so much cheaper for you, especially if you get a recommendation and introduction, and lo and behold, you are minimizing your cost of sale, and therefore your profitability is likely to be much higher. That's one of the big costs. A lot of people forget about that when they're setting up a business. And some other metrics might be the turnover of your stock. The higher your turnover of stock, the more you're getting value from your stock and not having to fund your stock holding. And the final one I would consider is your return on investment on marketing costs. We've talked about the cost of sales where you're selling direct, but you will, in any of your business, probably have to do some marketing. And that might be a website, that might be Facebook ads, Google ads, writing blogs, Twitter, LinkedIn, trade shows, active PR, press releases, press campaigns, etc. Your cost of sale. So you've got to look at which of the routes to market give you the lowest cost of sale and then maximize that. But you can only do that with experimentation. So moving on to the cost of setting up a business really depends on the business. Well, for a tradesperson, your lovely builder, painter, decorator, gardener, plumber, carpenter, electrician, etc. They all need some knowledge and skills. Hopefully they've learnt that already, or they need to go on some training courses. They may, if they're going to become a plumber, need to be certified as gas safe. If they're an electrician, they may need to be certified so that they can check a premises is not going to electrocute somebody. The other thing they will need is tools, van, maybe those certifications, the insurance. They will probably need an accountant. They will have to spend some money and effort finding work. Ideally, as I've mentioned already, finding contacts, but they might do advertising, leaflet drops. They might do checker trade. They'll probably have some sort of website, Facebook, LinkedIn, and they will need to develop some terms of trade. However, if you set up as a consultant or a contractor, then you need to define your offering and what you're doing. You probably will need an accountant. You'll probably need insurance. You will need a website, probably. You'll need to find work through agencies or your contacts as well. So you'll probably have to do a bit of social media, some blogging to show that you're an expert at what you do, and we'll need some sort of contract terms, although often the agency or the end client will have their own engagement terms as well, which you'll have to review. Another one, though, another example, big opportunity, is a food or drink maker. You've got to create a new food, whatever it is, a new pork pie, a new, it might be a new pizza base, it might be a new topping, it might be a new sauce, it might be a non-alcoholic beverage, it might be flavored vodka, it might be beer, I've seen lots of it might be wine, but there's a long time on building a winemaking business, particularly if you're going to plant the grapevines. That's about a 5 to 7 year effort, but you can buy in the grapes. And I've actually helped fund a new sparkling wine, English sparkling wine, who did that very successfully, in fact. So now, when you're creating new food or drink, you've got to do your research and development to come up with it. And you've got to find a way of manufacturing it. You've got to do some trials, some tastings, lots and lots of marketing. You might have to design and register a brand. You might need certification if it's a new food to certify that it's healthy. You might need to get the local authority to come and review your premises to actually say that SALSA or whatever, one of the certification, to say that you can produce food in these premises. And of course, you'll need to worry about shelf life on your products. They will have some sort of shelf life where you might have to go to a consultant to work that out rather than keeping it on the shelf and seeing when it goes moldy or doesn't taste very nice. So that's another thing you have to worry about as well. And then you've got to think manufacturing. Am I going to outsource that? Well, it can be quite cost effective to do that, particularly in the early days. So you don't have to pay for a factory or premises, all the machinery, the staff, all the ingredients directly. So that could be a way of doing it, and then bring it in-house subsequently when you've got the turnover going and prove that people really do like your product and want it. Although a lot of people, particularly in food and sauces, tend to make them at home and then think about the manufacturing. So if you're selling B2C, your products, then you need to think about your website, particularly if it's food or drink or it's a small manufactured item. And you need to think about, are you going to sell it through Amazon? Which is a great way of selling it because you've got a massive marketplace for you, so you can do it quite cost effectively. But of course, they take a margin. And very often you have no idea who your customers are, so you can't sell direct to them and increase your margin. So very often what people do is launch a website and do the social media to get known and also sell on Amazon to get the volume up as well and start building some brand recognition for what it is they're doing. Well, you obviously need to think about staff costs in any of these business. If you're going to employ staff, maybe a bookkeeper, but also you need to think about paying yourself occasionally as well. It's a rather nice thing to see some money going into your personal bank account. Another consideration when you're setting up a business, are you going to register for VAT? Well, once your turnover reaches at least £85,000, you have to register for VAT. Now, if you're selling B2C, direct to consumers, or through Amazon to consumer, remember, if you're registered for VAT, that will increase your prices by 20%. That can be quite painful unless you've allowed for it in your planning, that suddenly you're losing 20% of your margin that's going to go to HMRC to pay for your VAT. So that's just something to keep in mind. The second thing, though, is that if you're selling B2B, you might want to register for VAT because you look as though you're a proper business and that you're serious. And therefore, being registered for VAT, people feel much more comfortable in dealing with you because then they know they're not going to have a problem with HMRC subsequently because you've been trading when you shouldn't have been and your turnover's over £85,000. One advantage of being registered for VAT is that you can then claim back all your input costs. And this, depending on what it is you're doing, could be quite substantial. So if you were hiring contractors and putting them out to your customers, then that probably is accounting for 70 or 80% of your cost of doing business, and you're paying some 10 or 15% of your cost will be VAT if you can't claim it back from HMRC. So again, depends on the business and what you want to do. If you were setting up a software business, the final one that I've just mentioned, say to build a new solution or to build an app, then the challenge with that is you have got to build that software. And the likelihood is the first time you build your software, it won't be right. In fact, the second version might be a bit closer, but it's unlikely to be the final version that you really want. So the quicker you can get that minimal viable product, MVP in the trade out, great. And it also means when you have something to show people with a minimal viable product, they can feel it, they can test it, and they might want to buy it from you. And you can get feedback to find out what's wrong with it and why they don't want it. So just something to be aware of, and you either have to build it yourself or employ somebody or outsource it to one of the offshore centers. So, which is what a lot of people do, but then you may have support issues as well.